All right, hello everyone out there. If you're tuning in, and here is our final derby car of the year that we're going to run. It is October 1st, and we have rolled into spooky season. So the family did a last-minute paint job, just one coat of the orange late last night. Dad did, and then Mom and all the kids. Well, mainly Hudson, but James helped too. Nora was out doing her thing with the Grammy. But they did some decorating. Came out pretty neat. Pretty simple. We just have so many Halloween things all throughout our house, especially my boy Hudson. But pretty neat. Simple, but pretty neat. Hey, worst case, maybe we get some hardware with a paint trophy, best paint trophy for our last car. Because this one, the reason why we're again coming in hot, this is the first car I had in the summer that I got. I've been saving it for a later show here. I didn't intend early to do this late of a show, but I intended to do a later show because GSP, the guys, split the 4s and the 6s, and this one I knew I was going to take the Venango, or can see she is stock, referring to the tank. I was going to drop it, but again, as I mentioned here, I'm going to say how we ran into some issues. But yeah, just the battery box there. You can see I actually, with these big like mound things, I mean the seat sits on me, you can see that one sitting on them. I had to put a couple boards under it so that whenever I bolted it, it was solid. So just 2 here and 1 there. The fuel lines are running right through there, so it's kind of tricky to get that right. But that is it inside. Take the airbags out, and yeah. But anyways, we were saving it for later in the season, whenever they ran the 4 and 6s separate. And I had it all stripped. It was sitting in the shed, and went to move it in the pole barn, my father-in-law's. Moved it, parked it, and then all of a sudden it wouldn't start. The fuel pump would still turn on, and again, it still had the stock fuel pump. I had yet to drop it. I was about to that morning, a little over a week ago, and wouldn't work. So you see here, I have a toggle switch that is not hooked up to anything because it is not right. So what ended up happening, and it took me, I was bouncing off of everyone I knew. I was asking guys questions. You know, I even was about to have somebody come out with a machine just to show under the hood here how simple we are. But evidently what it is, and shout out to Carl Hurrelbrink if he ever watches these. Carl's a big derby in our area, Western PA. He's good at what he does. He knows how to make them tough, and he knows how to drive them. He will mess up your wheels and your front end something nasty. But messaged him, and hear what it seems to be. You'll see the wires there run into my starter. I don't have the ground right or something, but it was a bad ground somewhere. So I was describing what was happening to Carl after, again, I spent a week, the last week, where I was just going to drop the tank and finish up, put a paint job on it and be done. And I couldn't figure it out. I messaged Carl, and he's like, well, you know, the power to the starter. I'm like, yeah, it's power to the starter. I even took the starter into AutoZone. If you didn't know, AutoZone, you take your starter and they can hook it up and tell you, you know, if it runs, and it ran fine. So I hooked it back up, still nothing. You see there's actually a little bit of an exposed wire there. Got a little bit of an echo from this. Oh, go high. My starter, whenever I was taking off that little bolt there in the solenoid, it was so tight, and I had to get it off before I got the starter all the way out. Well, it kind of pulled and started to turn a little bit. So the starter still works like it should, but it's got a little exposed area there. You know, it's not supposed to rain, so I think we'll be all right. No water or anything gets in that. But touch the tool, if I get out of here. So the big bolt there to the little bolt in the solenoid, touch a needle nose plier to both, and you're in essence crossing the crossing the streams. You know, Ghostbuster reference. And she fired up. So I was like, oh my goodness, Carl. And this was literally last night at about 9:30. You see our jack-o'-lantern theme with the things on top. That I was talking with Carl, and he said to do that, and that was it. So my little girl had a birthday party, so I had to wait till it was over. That's whenever I tested the car. And then late last night, I just finished kind of the battery and simple stuff up front. I was planning on doing more just to show. I did want to show this car. It's a Nissan Sentra 2008, and I don't, unfortunately, not only because of time, but also the lines there, you'll see right there coming out of the transmission is the what do you call it, the transmission line that eventually gets to this front little transmission, you know, radiator, whatever it's called. But it runs into, first it seems like the AC, I don't know what that's called there, right below the main guy there. But it seems to run into it and then back out. So I don't know if they both run into the radiator, the AC unit as well as that. So there is no simple or even like way I know how to do that. So I'm like, well, try to keep the front end of the barrier and go from there. So right now the problem is we're gone. I don't have my wire right. I tried to direct wire the starter from what Carl said, how he did it, and looking online, and I don't know if I don't have the ground right or I don't have a wire right. So it still starts crossing with my needle nose. Those two bolts on the starter, she'll fire up. It's how I got her in the trailer. So worst case, we're rolling to the pits and hopefully have some fun. Again, maybe get a best paint, throwing together the jack-o'-lantern haunted look. But this is the final run. So we'll have a post video. I'm just going to throw right on the end of this. Don't have any build or anything like that video. We'll see what she does. And here we are, the morning after, a little cool and breezy morning. Again, it's October 2nd, so it's getting colder, but little unfortunate last night. The weather, Hurricane Ian went through Florida and then it kind of went up the East Coast. Carolinas got hit hard, and we were not supposed to have any weather like other than really beautiful fall weather, sunshine, until probably late Friday night or Saturday morning. And I say that because that was one of the main reasons why I was rushing around to get the car ready, was not only because I wanted to go to Knox, the Raceway, and Derby. I thought the track was cool, how they set it up whenever I was there earlier, to where the only time I ran at a racetrack, Derby, I did not like it. You kind of show the damage as I'm walking around. But it started raining, and like I said, I was late late the night before, I should say, into the morning, just head down trying to get everything fixed and finished, because like I said, it wasn't running until like 10 o'clock the night before the Derby. I couldn't figure out the wiring or what my issue was, and finally did. And the weather from Hurricane Ian shifted, or I should say Hurricane Ian shifted our weather, and all of a sudden Saturday, pretty much from about noon on, it just rained. So the pit, it was just sloppy, and it's such a shame. There was a great car turnout there. I think it was 56 or 7 cars. You can see we did get a best trophy. It said HUD, or well, best paint trophy, excuse me. Yeah, still a little tired, sorry. Best paint trophy, which the spider Halloween theme, you know, it looked cool with the jack-o'-lantern, simple paint design, but everything else, HUD and Mom in particular did, so looked cool. Just unfortunate. Got to spin around for a while, car ran for a while, but I'm not sure. We're gonna look at it now. It still was turning over, it just stalled. Like you can see, I didn't take any damage up front. The wheel over here was a little damaged. Got pressed in, the tie rod's a little bent, and I think the axle itself is a little bent, but it's still fine, you know, still driving, if you will. In the back, not really a ton of damage either. You can see the track has a slight grade to it because it's, you know, dirt track, racetrack. So I was, one time the guy was coming all the way from the other side, and I was coming a little bit down, and we hit, and he really that was the hardest hit. Like I said, it was so muddy, especially with just, you know, stock classes and tires to get traction. Well, it might have, yeah, one of our little decorations got ripped off. That's all right, Hud. But yeah, it just stopped running, and I could turn it back over. How I mentioned, I was just taking a wire straight from the starter into the car, but it wouldn't refire. It did actually refire, and it fluttered, and then stopped. So it seems like it's not getting fuel. And again, I wanted to drop the Derby tank, but that was what I was going to do a week before the Derby, but then it wasn't running, so I spent all week, anytime I could, trying to figure out what was going on. And whenever I figured it out, 10 o'clock the night before, I didn't have enough time to drop, look underneath here, the tank. But as you can see, it's not pressed into, I mean, I didn't get hit hard enough, or we just couldn't get enough speed. The only thing I thought, there was a wire running to the, what do you call it here, the fuel whatever this thing is. So I thought maybe it got pinched, but I'm not even sure. Looking at it now, it doesn't look like it. I mean, it was going in and under there. Like I said, that's stuff that I would have removed, and especially if I dropped the derby tank, it would have been gone. So I'm not sure. We're gonna look at her here quick, and maybe there's a derby in our area where we like to derby at Venango a week from today. Maybe we'll go there. But again, you know, a little bit of a bummer. The weather was bad. There's one of our kitties. But otherwise, you know, last minute, she ran. Shout out to the Shevitz. Him and his crew, he's the one that helped me. I'll pop the hood here and show what he's like, no. He's like, you don't need to talk to us, just do this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so much easier than what I was trying to do. And I could have then not had to take the starter off 9 or 10 times trying to figure out the wiring. You can see that wheel's almost straight. This guy here, she's pretty bent in, but she's still driving. So we'll pop the hood here and see what it looks like under. Well, son of a gun. It's running, but you can see it's spitting and sputtering. This is what it did after it started last night. Not sure. Well, as you could see there, she started up, and just like it did last night after it stalled in the pit, it was like sputtering, like the RPMs were sputtered. It actually stalled out after I first started it out of the car. Then I climbed in, started it, got on the throttle, and for about the first 30 seconds to a minute, it kept doing that. Like I had to stay on the throttle, but it would run. And then after about a minute, it seemed to like blow itself out. The fuel line's not damaged. The fuel tank's not damaged. Up front, you can see I got pressed a little bit right here. It looks like it might have leaked out of the radiator a little bit, but there's nothing damaged. I mean, muddy, likely wet, but again, I didn't like short out. It would turn over and start, but then it wouldn't keep running before I timed out. So we're gonna get her off the trailer and take another look at her, but she might have a second round. We'll see.